Hey everybody, it's time for another live show, and here with me is Brian. Before we get to the questions, which you can just insert down there in the question and comment section, either on Facebook or on YouTube, this is our first attempt at streaming to multiple locations at the same time. So this is on Facebook, and it's on 2 YouTube channels simultaneously. So yay for us if it all goes well. And if not, I'm sure everybody will let us know. So the first thing we should talk about is what we have been up to this past week. So I've been driving the new Jeep Grand Wagoneer. I've been driving the Rivian R1T, the Ford F-150 Lightning, and a Toyota 4Runner. So if anybody has questions about those, you can throw them down there in the comment section as well. And then I was also at a really interesting Brembo braking event that Brian hasn't heard about, so we can talk about that now. I don't know if you've heard, Brian, about Brembo Sensify. They really don't want us to call this brake-by-wire. It was really funny how many hoops they tried to jump through to not call it brake-by-wire when it is literally braking by wire, because there is a brake pedal with a brake pedal force simulator on it, there's a sensor, and then there are wires, so literally braking by wire. At any rate, it does look really cool. So this is a major improvement on primarily ABS brake functionality, but also has efficiency and manufacturing wins for it. So it means that we might be seeing Brembo brakes on non-performance vehicles in the future, which is something that we haven't till this point really seen. Brembo's been very focused on the high-end, high-performance side of the market, and one of the interesting twists about this new braking system is that it has an electromechanical disc brake that can be used either in the front or in the rear of a vehicle in any combination the manufacturer wants to choose, and it pulls the pad off the rotor. So I know we've talked about the possibility of EVs going back to drum brakes because it reduces the amount of friction that you get just rolling down the road. And this theoretically has the promise of being able to reduce that while also giving you good braking feel, because it's of course being done by the computer. And then because everything has more detailed speed sensors, force sensors, and position sensors, etc., the anti-lock brake actuation is really, really smooth. It doesn't have that pedal jitter that you'd normally find when ABS kicks in. And it has the promise of not needing to bring the tires to as complete of a stop, yielding better steering motion. So as you're in a panic braking situation and you're seesawing the wheel side to side, you go exactly on the intended path because you don't have those wheel stopping moments. That's the claim at any rate. It definitely played along really nicely. They had 2 Model 3s out there, one with the traditional Brembo braking system from Tesla, and then one modified with this new system. Unfortunately, they had the regen braking on, so it was a little bit difficult to tell the exact behavior at the beginning of the braking event, one vehicle to the other, but it did look really cool, and supposedly we're going to see this system on some vehicles starting in 2024, and you'll be able to mix, or manufacturers, I should say, will be able to mix traditional hydraulic brakes up front with this system. So the brake-by-wire system is then going to control individual little hydraulic pumps on the front brakes, and this allows them to have some redundancy. So if one brake fluid reservoir dries out, or one brake cable, or one brake hose starts leaking, etc., all the other brakes are unaffected in the vehicle, and it's better able to compensate for that because of the way that it's designed. And then you were, of course, driving, or not driving, but you were out visiting the Honda Civic Type R, the brand new one. So tell us all about Honda's Boy Racer compact hatch.
Yeah, it was definitely more of a first date vibe. Didn't get too much out of the Civic Type R. We saw it in person. It was nice to see. They had 3 cars, 2 in white, 1 in red, and clearly they listened to a lot of people. They toned down the styling. Obviously, the new Civic, it was inspired more by the current Accord and all that, and the hatchback Civic sort of looks like a mushed together Honda Accord a little bit, and they just added the big wing and a few different upgrades to the front fascia, and voila, you have the Type R. And I think it looks really good. It definitely is something I would be more happy being seen in, because the current one is just, to me personally, a little outlandish looking. I know there are a lot of people who do like the look, and I probably can't speak because I have a car that does have a few sort of outgoing features to it as well. But I don't know. I think
assertive styling.
Assertive styling in your face, yeah. But the Type R had a big wing before. I would say the new wing on it is a little bit smaller. But if you saw my first look video, I would say the way they attach it to the actual body looks much more aftermarket than the current one does. So that was.
Does it look like it's easily removable if you don't want it?
It does, actually. I think it looks more removable than the current one does. So maybe that's why. But yeah, I mean, I kind of if I would want a smaller wing if I got one, but it looks like if you want to do it aftermarket, that might be easier this time around. Otherwise, differences, we don't really know anything about power. We know it's the same
Yeah.
engine. We know it's the same 6-speed manual, all just upgraded.
Of course, you got flamed on that. People were saying that it's not the same engine because it has a different air intake. So,
Ah,
and Honda said it's the same engine. So for everybody out there, same engine, different air intake.
It's the same engine that was in the last one and the one before that. It was
Right.
introduced on the 4th generation that we didn't get here. It's the same one. It's just been massaged. I mean,
I don't think that's a problem, to be honest. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
No, it's a good car. It's a good engine, and they didn't need to change it. So I assume it's going to have more power. That would be the hope. I don't, maybe.
What did they say about power?
They didn't. They really didn't say it. They just said it's the most powerful Honda branded vehicle they've ever made. It's the most powerful Civic Type R they've ever made. So it's going to have more power for them to say all that. But I don't know. We'll see. It could be 310 because it was 306.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? But I liked it. The interior has the same colors on the insides, the red front bucket seats and the black rear seats with the red seat belts. Same new Civic dashboard, except I think the LCD instrument cluster is bigger. It takes up the entire binnacle instead of the partial situation that this, or does the touring regular Civic have a full-size one?
I believe it has a full-sized one. I'm sure someone will correct us down there, but it's my understanding that it has the big one because I thought it was weird that the CRV does not get the full cluster. It only gets the 7-inch one. So what is this? This one has, remind me again?
It's a full size.
Oh, full. Okay.
Yeah, it's a full. The reason I said that is because I think even on the Civic Touring, for some reason I think there's somewhat of a bezel around it, but this one there was more. It seemed like it was even bigger. I don't know. I would have to see them right next to each other, but it seemed like it was bigger than the one you get in Touring, which is already a full-size one. So I don't know. But it had a cool screen setup where if you push the plus R button, which is a new drive mode, that's kind of like the V mode button on Cadillacs or the N button. It's like a direct to the highest, turn everything up to the highest setting. That button will take you there, and it gives you that screen that has the vertical or the horizontal tachometer you get in like Audi models and some other car companies that do that. So that looked really cool. You could probably adjust that further in the settings, but yeah, I mean, it's.
And did they say when it was going to be on sale?
This fall. So not too far.
Fall.
Yeah.
So, okay. We'll probably get to know more details. So this fall is apparently also when we get to drive the Honda CR-V. And it will be, apparently the launch program is going to be primarily focused on the hybrid model. So I'm going to be interested to see how that goes with them.
Have we gotten the invite for that yet? Because people were asking me about that and I hadn't heard about it.
They have not set the official date for the hybrid drive as I understand it. So no, not yet.
Okay. Well, it was sort of just like on that same tangent with Honda. It is interesting how, we've seen HRV now, we've seen CRV, we're going to be seeing Pilot. I wonder if Passport is going to return. I have a weird feeling Passport's not going to return this time because I don't see many of them and I don't see the point of them because there's a Pilot Trail Sport. It's not that much more expensive and you get the larger cargo or the third row. I don't know if I see a future for the Passport.
That's an interesting question. Let's see how many Passports Honda has sold recently. It looks like they sold 53,000 last year, so I would bet it's going to come back because 53 is not bad. Yeah, for the mid-size segment. It's a pretty easy one to do since it's just a shortened Pilot. So seems like it would return. Okay.
Well, and it's also interesting because the HRV interior was really nice, and I think even for the price, they did a good job with it. But then the HRV, I wasn't there with you to see it in person, but it looks like they somewhat did some interesting rearranging of the content and what you can get for certain trim levels, and it's almost like that one's not as good for the money as the HRV seems to be on the surface. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to tell because we don't have pricing yet on the CRV yet, so we don't know what it's going to be like. We just know that they have reshuffled the trim levels, so it's going to start with a regular turbo and CVT. Then the next step up is going to be a hybrid. Then if you want leather, you go back to the 1.5 turbo, and the top end trim is now going to be sport touring rather than just regular touring. And that's going to have the hybrid as well. So all the sport models are going to be the hybrid models, which is definitely a shift for Honda on that one. Let's go to Mike's question here. Mike was asking primarily about the Civic Type R, so we covered that one. And then secondarily, can we do the range test loop without the wheel covers on the Rivian? I have to say we probably won't do that, Mike. And the main reason is because it would be another 250 miles on the odometer. And at this point, I'm not sure how long the Rivian is going to live with us or not. We can dive into that if anybody has any specific questions on the Rivian and the Lightning. But sort of in a nutshell, the Lightning still hasn't turned up. Who knows where the Lightning is? It's lost somewhere in shipping, apparently. And Ford claims it is shipping. We've looked this up. We're given the VIN in May. So I know that it exists. It has been built. There are pictures of it rolling off the assembly line, and somehow it has just been stuck somewhere, wherever between the factory and here. If it ever shows up in early August, we'll make a decision at that point. We just had the Lightning Platinum in for review, and I was a little disappointed, to be honest, with the Lightning's efficiency and range figures. I was really impressed with the Rivian's range figures, not when towing. When towing, that's a bit tricky. And in the 4 years that it's been since I pre-ordered the Rivian, I think I've had some doses of reality versus the EV towing range in either of these trucks. So I just don't know whether it will work for my particular situation. And as a company use vehicle, because the weird conglomerate that is Alex Notto's an EV Buyer's Guide and the podcast and everything else, it's also tied in with a materials engineering company that is on that side of the wall. And the reason we had a Hyundai Nexo was for pickups and deliveries. So theoretically, one of these vehicles that's swirling around now is going to stick around for a 3-year lease as a company car for pickups and deliveries and things like that. And I just don't know if an $80,000 pickup truck is the right vehicle for that. So fair warning, it is entirely possible that the EV6, the Lightning, and the Rivian R1T might all just get sold and removed, and they might be replaced with the plug-in hybrid Chrysler Pacifica. At any rate, with that bombshell out of the way, let's move into a different question. Want to answer this one from Naveen about Toyota's products. Naveen he's very, very negative on Toyota.
He is. You want me to go? Oh, okay. All right. So he says, lately Toyota and Lexus have been putting out uncompetitive products that get schooled by its rivals hardly before it even goes on sale. Why would they even bother wasting billions if the end result is mediocre? Sip on that tea there. That's a good loaded question because
Such a loaded question, really.
Well, it's like they're not necessarily mediocre products. Let's just start there. There are aspects of what they're putting out right now that are competitive, that are, at least from a design standpoint or a technology standpoint, are cutting edge or are fresh and new. But then, of course, then the specs come out or the pricing comes out, and you're like, oh, well, I could get this Kia or Hyundai with this or this, and it does it more efficiently or whatever it may be, or you might get this Honda that can do it better. I don't know. There's always these like, oh, but with Toyotas. And for example, I think the biggest example of that right now for me personally, from what I've seen this year, is the new Sequoia. And Tundra not as much, but Sequoia was like, okay, it looks really good. I think it's the best looking large SUV right now, but it's basically
I do think it looks good. Yeah.
And I just don't think, but it's not even really a large SUV because you can't actually treat it like one inside. There are much more versatile vehicles that are a size class down on the outside. So it's like, now they did that because they wanted to make it a hybrid and make it more fuel efficient. But it's not even that much more fuel efficient. So it's like, you know,
I would say my defense of Toyota in this is if you're the way that Naveen has obviously loaded this question, even though I know he owns a Toyota currently, clearly he is not the Toyota shopper that Toyota is interested in, because their sales have proved that the average Toyota shopper wants what Toyota is doing, and that is the ultimate business answer. Right. You might not like what a particular car manufacturer is doing. That means they're not making cars for you. You should go buy a different car. Right. You know, the people that want Toyotas, they're wanting what Toyota's putting out. So, you know, they want a full-size SUV. Toyota gives them a Toyota version of a full-size SUV, and that's what they're after. You know, I think Toyota was pretty upfront that they weren't trying to conquer any Tahoe or Suburban shoppers with the Sequoia. They're looking to keep the Toyota customer in the fold that says, you know what, I have a RAV4, maybe I just bought a boat, or I have some horses or whatever, and I want a full-size SUV to tow this thing, and I want to be able to still seat 7, and have 8,000 pounds of trailer on the back. And there's a Toyota option for that person that wants that. And, that's basically the answer.
I remember them saying at the Sequoia event, like, yeah, we wanted to make sure we pleased and like impress the current Sequoia owners first. We're like, okay, we want to make sure this is something that they could see themselves trading up to. Then they're like, then we're focusing on pulling in new buyers, which, like that's a pretty honest answer, I would say. And then, we haven't had a live show in a while, but like since then, the Crown has come out, and that's a very controversial vehicle. We were both there for that. I like it. I think it's a unique looking car. I like it in certain colors. That two-tone situation might be a little too much.
Yeah.
But
no two tones.
But the problem with that car too is, Toyota, I've seen a couple of interviews with Toyota people, and I didn't even ask them this when I was there, but they're claiming it's not a replacement for the Avalon. But technically it is, because it's about the same size. Yeah. There's a sedan leaving the lineup, a sedan replacing the lineup. If they had made it more like a Volkswagen Arteon or a Kia Stinger with a liftback, maybe I would think a little bit differently about it, but it's just another sedan with a little bit higher of a ride height. And so, I don't know how that's going to do.
And how much higher, we don't really know. It is worth noting that in some markets, they're calling that thing that we saw, they're calling it the Crown crossover, because there is a Crown sedan in other markets. There's a whole Crown family of things.
Yes.
I would not call it a crossover. I mean, the whole trunk thing is a problem.
That's the problem.
It honestly did not look like it had more than 6 inches of ground clearance. I would be surprised, frankly, if it was over 6 inches. So, but it is funny that they're trying not to call it a replacement for the Avalon when it's totally a replacement for the Avalon. I liked everything about it except for that two-tone color scheme. That was really my only complaint about it.
And this is purely speculation, but like I was trying to sort of talk to Toyota people about what do they expect the pricing to be on it, and I was able to determine that it's going to start right around $50,000 and go up or around north of 60, fully loaded. Which is,
that will be shocking.
If that's true, that is shocking, because that's too much. That's too much.
I will be intrigued to see what it actually turns out to be.
Yeah.
In the meantime, thanks John M for the super chat there. And then let's go on to one question here about the Max Pack R1T. I am intrigued by the Max Pack R1T as well. Two things we don't know at all, because they haven't said, are, will the Max Pack also have 11,000 pounds of towing capability? It seems like it will. They've implied that it will, but the additional weight of the pack may or may not change that. It is very likely to be less efficient than the mid-sized pack or smaller pack in the R1T, because weight is definitely going to affect your efficiency. It is also going to affect your range in a positive way. So if your range reduction in the mid-pack R1T is 60% or 70% or 50%, which can definitely happen, then you're going to see that same reduction in the Max Pack model, only you're going to have more range available because the battery's bigger. So that's probably pretty much what you should know. Let's move on here. If there's any, if you find a question there, just let me know here, and Brian and I will sort of troll through the questions here to find out interesting questions. This is a good one, though. New Tundra's turbo issue. So, Bruce, this has really been an interesting point. It proves two things. Every manufacturer can have a bit of a stumble when it comes to reliability, including Toyota. But I think it also shows that, at least by the numbers that I have seen, it also shows that internet stories can sometimes blow things out of proportion. So from what I understand from folks that I know at Consumer Reports and other reliability reporting places that definitely have a high percentage of Toyotas in their reporting metrics and data sheets, it has not been a hugely pervasive problem. There was a run of engines that had a problem, but on a high volume product like the Tundra, they found it pretty quickly. It seems like a combination of owners as well as internal discoveries at Toyota found that there was a problem. They made the appropriate warranty replacements and repairs, etc. And I have not heard of anything after that. So if there's anything specific that anybody's pointing to, go ahead and send links down there in the comment section so we can reference them. But as far as I am aware from sources outside of Toyota, I'm not talking about Toyota because, who knows how they might try and spin that. I will say that it does appear to be a very, very limited issue. And with any first year of a product, the very first few that come out, there can always be some funky issues here and there. More so with small volume products is the big thing to know. This is a good thing to keep in mind. if you're Jaguar and you build 2,000 to something a year, it could take you years to find a problem. But if you are Toyota and you're building 300,000, 400,000 RAV4s a year, you'll find the problem way faster because there are more people out there. You've built more cars. It's just going to be discovered earlier for some of those oddball problems that maybe only affect 1% of vehicles. It's basically the reason why if you're looking for a reliable new car, you should avoid the first year and stick with really any of the major car companies out there should be just fine. Core models, the models that are the most popular, avoid bells and whistles. If you're not a fan of unreliable features, just don't select the feature. Get manual seats, get manually adjustable steering columns, etc. The more features you add, the more opportunity there is for unreliability.
So a lot of people are asking about the Celestiq. I was just starting to check it out before we did the live. It's a last minute live. So I'm looking at it again. You know, it looks good to me. It just kind of looks like a longer, sleeker Lyric. Longer, sleeker. You know, that looks like that's sort of, you can see the very similar design cues, the very interesting sort of boomerang-looking LED tail light on the sides. And yeah, this is, from what we know, it's expected to cost nearly or around $300K. Alex, you said in your Lyric video that, and I apologize, my water heater is making noise behind me, but you said in your video about the Lyric that if they can make that interior into a $300,000 version, that it's going to be worth the money because that's already a really good interior. What do you
I'm
think?
intrigued. I want to see it in person. It's going to be hand built, which it has the opportunity to mean that there's going to be someone going over each vehicle to make sure the stitching is perfect and this is perfect and that's perfect. But what do you think about the price tag? I think that GM could do it if they want to do it. The two questions in my mind are do they really want it bad enough? And would you be willing to pay $300,000 for a Cadillac?
I would be willing to pay that for the Cadillac because I would not consider myself a brand snob. I don't care about, and I'm not in a position to really, but if I was trying to maintain my sensibility and the way I think about cars is if it's nice enough, if it has the quality, the features, the tech, and it looks good, I don't care if it's Cadillac because Cadillac already has the luxury thing going for them. So it's obviously going to be a very, very nice, probably super, super quiet because you said the Lyric is one of the quietest cars.
Lyric was really quiet. And it rode really nicely. I'm sure that the Celestiq is going to be insanely heavy because the Lyric is heavy. The Hummer is, oh my God, how is anything this heavy?
Right. I don't know. I think I would consider it because I mean, what are your other options at 300? Are they're just Bentleys and Rolls Royces and
Mercedes
maybe a Maybach.
Yeah, because you can get a regular non-AMG, non-Maybach S-Class up over $250,000. So we're talking that range. And then of course, the super luxuries. And this is going to be a sedan, which I was a little bit surprised by too. The proportions, we don't know all of the details yet, and I was hoping it would be bigger, but some of these more recent photos, there are people next to it. So it seems like it is a lower, sleeker sedan than I had anticipated. Somehow I had almost hoped that it would be like the presidential limo, that it would be like the Beast, where it was maybe Hummer underneath and Cadillac Lyric on top, and it would be this ginormous, tall, crazy big sedan. It appears to be more of a traditional luxury sedan size and shape.
I mean, perhaps they'll pull a Hyundai Ioniq 6 on us and really change the proportions on the real thing, because this is still just a prototype. It's not the production or anything, but it could be a little bit different. But yeah, it definitely is smaller looking than I thought it would be. And some people are commenting on the rear overhang. That is a big rear overhang. But I mean, overall, I like the shape. It looks decent and unique in the segment. And yeah, somebody also mentioned that they've had concepts in the past of vehicles in the similar vein, like the CL, Mirage, all these ones that never became cars. So like you said, they can do it. And like some people are saying, they can design the car. It's a matter of, can they convince people who, like let's say you were in the market for something like the CT6. Well, no one bought the CT6, and partially because it wasn't nice enough. I think it wasn't like that interior. It was good, but it wasn't like what you're getting now on Lyric.
I think I think the bigger problem with CT6 was its size, and I think this also affected Lincoln's Continental. So a large portion of full-size luxury sedans are purchased by executive transport companies, limo drivers basically. And this goes for Mercedes as well with the S-Class. A huge percentage of S-Class sales in the United States go towards transportation companies. And there's been a mass exodus of sedan purchases in that segment to the Cadillac Escalade and, oddly enough, even just a regular Suburban. Black Suburbans somehow have taken the place of big sedans in the luxury segment, including S-Class sales that used to go in that direction. Mm-hmm. But the CT6 has a teeny tiny back seat, and so did the Continental. The back seat was so small that it really wasn't usable, and the trunk was small, right? So if you're in this business of executive limo driving, basically, what's the point when the back seat is too small for your customers? So I think that's where a lot went wrong. They just that kind of customer, they bought some Continentals, none of them bought the CT6. And the ones that did buy Continentals regretted it, and then Lincoln tried to substitute the town car, which was the rebadged MKZ thing with the third row deleted, so that way the second row could be pushed back a little bit further. That was a little better. Whatever they called that one. The
one that looked like a hearse from the factory.
Yeah, the hearse thing. Yeah, it was MKZ, right? MKT, that's right, MKT. Yeah, the hearse one. And it was kind of hearsey looking, let's be frank. They did have a hearse version too. So,
They still, I believe, or maybe they don't. I know they don't build them, but like I still see them. They're like people bought them because they look like that.
Before I switch away from this one, Brexit is asking about any major changes for MDX Type S from 22 to 23. No. So if the model year is pretty recent, like it is with the Type S, there are very rarely changes to the next model year. So it's primarily going to be pricing and availability, and maybe some reshuffling of option packages there. Yeah. Let's see here. What do we think about the assembly quality of the new Grand Cherokee? Well, you should stay tuned because Brian's going to be driving the new Grand Cherokee shortly, the 4xe one again. And I would say Stellantis build quality generally is pretty decent. It ranges from average to good depending on the vehicle that you're talking about. Parts quality tends to be fairly high in the upper level trims, pretty average in the mainstream trims. It all really just depends on how much you're paying for the Grand Cherokee. If you get the very top end trim, you get hand-stitched leather dashboard and door components, etc. Fit and finish there is pretty good. If you are the kind of person that is really, really nitpicky and you want to make sure that when there's a laser cut opening and there's a button in the opening that it's perfectly aligned, the Grand Cherokee components that are done that way are not going to be as good as a Lexus. But generally speaking, I would say they're pretty similar to the average. BMW can sometimes have some seams that are off there. So I would say it's pretty similar to some of the luxury segment companies for a similar price. Don't expect top-end Grand Cherokee to have build quality of a Mercedes-Benz S-Class because it doesn't cost enough.
I mean, I will say when we first drove the 4xe, the Grand Cherokee Summit Reserve trim felt very luxurious. Like it was super nice. Build quality seemed to be all in check. Really soft leather everywhere. I mean, yeah, like you said, if you're paying in the upper echelon of what you can get for a Grand Cherokee, then it is very nice. But you can be down there at the lower end, and it's not going to be nearly as good. It's still good, but my problem with I still have my experience with their new Uconnect system with the Grand Wagoneer I had, which I need to have that remedied. I need to get like another unit because mine was just a disaster, and I don't think we had any problems with it in the Grand Cherokee. I don't really think we were messing with it too much, but it seemed like it was fine. I would need to use that system again because I think their older versions of Uconnect were snappier and worked a little bit more reliably than the new system, which is a tangent, but I'll be driving it briefly at the end of the month, so I'll try to see if I like it still. We'll see.
I currently have the Grand Wagoneer in, and we haven't had the same issues that you had. There are some interactions where it could be snappier, but I would say it is significantly faster than the Lincoln and Ford systems. So I would like a slightly more responsive touch display occasionally. Most of the functions have been fine. It's never crashed or anything like that. But you stab a button and it's 1, 2, and then the option shifts kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And in a Ford Lightning, or a Mach-E, when you first turn it on, you're trying to stab a button and you're like, stab, nothing. Wait, stab, still nothing. And you're just like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope, we're not ready. Nope, still not ready. And sometimes it can be a good 20 seconds before everything is booted up and you can do your thing. So I would say not as responsive as iDrive or Mercedes, whatever they're calling it now. What is Mercedes calling it? It's not Command anymore.
MBUX.
Yeah, MBUX. And pretty similar to Audi's system, which I have not really paid attention to much lately, but we recently had a Q5 and an RS3. And I have to say Audi's MMI system doesn't seem to have aged as well as I had thought it had aged in my head.
Yeah.
iDrive 8, which is for some reason receiving some bad press. I like iDrive 8 just fine. It's definitely more sluggish than the competitive German products.
I'm trying to think of what would be the best one right now. I mean, I guess it is Mercedes system I like, but it is so convoluted at times. You have to really dig to find certain functions in there. I don't, I mean, they're all kind of like that at some level, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if Uconnect improves for me. Okay, so Elliot's asking, this is an interesting question. 3 models from the same brand becoming 3 different models of the same category.
I think it's the commonality of them, how many you see.
Right. They are very common, I will say. I don't see many Model X's because obviously that's a much more expensive vehicle, but in Atlanta, Model 3s and Ys just roam the streets. They just are everywhere here. And yeah, I guess that's because a lot of people still think, a lot of the general public, if you're not counting people who are watching this live with us right now, or people who would not be tuning into this kind of content, and especially if you go on Facebook, you find people on there just in general who think that Tesla is the only company that makes electric cars. They literally think Tesla is the only one. And I'll point out to people oh, no. You got Hyundai, you got Toyota, you got Honda soon, you got GM coming out with so many cars, and all these other companies, and they're just oh, well, it can't be as good. Why would you say that? What is your basis? And they think it's because Tesla was first, and that I don't know, they just think that it's the only option, that's the only one they can even consider. And then when I show them, oh, here's the other option, in my opinion, it looks better, it has similar range, or any of these other comparable specs, then they're like, oh, well, how much is it? And pretty much everything that's in the similar size class as Model 3 and Model Y is less expensive right now. Yep. Model Y has gotten way too expensive. Model X has gotten too expensive. I believe Model 3 now starts at in the high 50s. I think Model Y starts in the mid 60s. Or maybe I'm even below. I'm undercutting it, but
Model 3 is the least expensive. Model 3 is a little bit less expensive than that. It's let's click their
40,
order button here now because we can answer it. It is 30. That's after potential savings. 46,990 is the rear wheel drive one.
Yeah.
But if you want the long range model, which most people are probably going to want because that's the over 300 mile rated one, that's 57,990. So it's a pretty big jump up there for the bigger battery pack. And it's worth noting that people that want that long distance vehicle, not just for road trips, but for the faster charging, the base Model 3 charges pretty slowly because it does not use the same battery packs or the same battery types and technology that we find in other Teslas. Tesla's really been rah about cylindrical cells. There's a huge push from the Tesla fans that cylindrical cells are the way to go and everybody must have a cylindrical cell. Well, Tesla doesn't use that in all their Teslas. Model 3 uses pouch cells in that base Model 3 because of cost and efficiency reasons. And as a result, in their particular design, this is not universal with all pouch cells, but in their particular design, it also results in slower DC charging. So that base Model 3 charges slower, but it lets you get a Model 3.
Right. And then the average cost of an EV, well, people are talking about how, the average cost is assumed to be pretty high. And yes, that they are high because, this is a new, still, emerging technology that they have to figure out how to efficiently produce, and effectively make a car that people will actually want to buy. And that's not going to be a $30,000 car, and it won't probably be for a long time. Tesla almost there. They thought they could do it, but the Model 3, their production issues and the fact they realized, wow, we actually can't produce this at the price we thought we could. Same with Rivian. They hiked the price up there last minute by, what was it, like $12,000?
Yeah, I mean, the Rivian was always a luxury truck.
It was always
And
expensive.
yeah, and let's be honest, the Model 3 was always a luxury car as well. But for some reason, there's this weird conjoining of Tesla fans and anti-Tesla people that say, oh, it's not a luxury car. And the Tesla fans want to say it's not a luxury car because there's this hope that somehow it could be an electric Corolla one day, which it will never be.
No.
And then the anti-Tesla fans say it's not a luxury car because they think it's not nice enough to compete with the BMW 3 Series. But when you look at who's buying a Model 3 and a Model X, most of the sales are coming from luxury car companies. Sales conquests are luxury car shoppers that are considering these because of the price tag, the performance, the handling ability, etc. A Model 3 with wide grippy tires, summer tires on it, etc., 0 to 60 times under 4 seconds. In what world is this a Toyota Corolla comparison? It absolutely is not. So why would the price tag ever drop down that low? Tesla's not investing in 100 horsepower motors to make their Tesla behave and perform like a Corolla. They're not investing in torsion beam suspensions in the back to make the rear suspension cost what it would cost in a discount car. None of the design development direction at Tesla is going after mainstream mass market stuff. The profit margin isn't there. I just had this argument with someone recently that was complaining that Ford's gross margin isn't as good as Tesla's. Like, why would it be? They're not selling $65,000 cars. Tesla's average transaction price is over $65,000. Actually, it's almost $68,000, as I recall last quarter. It's more than $25,000 higher than Ford's average transaction price. This is an apples to oranges thing. The average transaction price of a Tesla going out the door is very Mercedes-like. That's the segment that Tesla exists in. And it's good business for them because that's where the profit is. If Tesla's going to make a profit, make a go of being a company that sells 1 million cars, maybe 2 million cars a year at some point in time, they need to be selling luxury cars for luxury car prices to make ends meet.
Right. And of course, we can't discount Tesla did wake the giant. It did. They started making the cars. At first, people were skeptical of them because they started off with a Lotus Elise with a battery in it. And I was like, oh, it's expensive. It doesn't go very far. Then Model S came out, and it was like, oh, okay, this can be. And at the time, I was younger and maybe more naive, but I thought that was a luxury car when it came out. It seemed like it was a super nice car.
Yeah.
And now it's so old, like it's there. Like other people are saying, it's got competitors now that are the same price or less, and they're actual luxury brands with luxury car interiors. And close specs, maybe not all hitting the same marks that a Model S fully loaded would hit, but that's an over $100,000 car. I would rather get a car.
Yeah, they've still got that impression of what a luxury car is. Like it or hate it, for the Tesla fans and the Tesla haters out there, whatever you may associate with, Tesla is the benchmark in the EV segment. In whichever segment Tesla is competing in, they are undoubtedly the benchmark. They have the volume, they have the brand, ambassadors out there, I guess you could say, the owners and fans. That is the benchmark. Everything must be compared.
Yeah. And I think this is the last sort of thing I'll say on this is if, you're not in the position to afford, or if you're not in like the sort of like the area where you can go home and plug your car in and you can afford a car that's already $80,000 and you're considering electric, I still think plug-in hybrids are the best way to go. It's the best middle ground between you can still plug your car in, but you don't have to rewire your whole house for it, and you don't have to worry about range because you always have that backup from the gas engine. So people who are considering switching from a hybrid to electric, I would say consider a plug-in hybrid first if you don't think you're ready to make the full financial commitment that an EV might require. Because I mean, there are a lot of buildings and land, like if you live in an apartment like where I live, they're not going to install charging stations here ever because the infrastructure. This is an old building. There are tons of reasons why they can't do it, and they just won't do it. And there are a lot of instances like that around the country, and it's just for some people in some places just not realistic to own one. So I think if you want to have the similar experience and get in the HOV lane or get some incentives, plug-in hybrids are really, and there are a lot of more plug-in hybrids out there than people think, and they're all pretty good. So I don't know. That's what I
Yeah,
think.
just depends on what you're looking at there.
What we're looking at.
So this guy's asking us about the Elantra N. You drove the Elantra N recently, as I recall.
I did, but I didn't have the manual. I had
Ah,
the
okay.
8-speed DCT. Yes, so I won't have a manual Elantra review for you coming, but I do have a DCT. You can ask me any questions about the manual though, because I do drive the
Hmm.
Veloster N with a manual, and it's the same transmission. I'm
Yeah.
planning on making a video on that on my car soon. I've had it for over 3 years now, so I need to make like a ownership update video. So stay tuned for that. I'll talk about it in that video if or slash when that comes out. But yeah, there will be an Elantra N review, but it's the automatic. Honestly,
Right.
the automatic's really good though. So
Yeah. Looks like he's primarily asking about the seats here, which I would
true.
agree lower back support is a little bit lacking. So if that's an issue for you and you really like the car, you can get an aftermarket back support.
Sure,
But
yeah.
definitely keep that in mind. Spend a lot of time at the dealer if you can in the car and really decide if that seat's comfortable for you.
I would say it's the new those N-Light bucket seats. They have quite
Hmm.
serious bolstering to
Hmm.
them. So yeah, definitely sit in one, decide for yourself. But I don't know, they work for me.
Yep. Here's a good question from Drew. We do have some videos on the Volkswagen Arteon. I don't have anything on the refreshed one, though,
I would like to do
unfortunately.
the new one. Yeah,
Yeah, I
honestly, that
really
new
want to see
300,
that.
the 300.
The problem apparently is that Volkswagen's had a lot of production parts constraints, and so the production of the new Arteon was really delayed. And last time I was at a Volkswagen event, we ended up driving the older Arteon because the newer one wasn't ready yet. On the A6 all-road, I keep asking for one, and one has not turned up somehow. I do love the A6, and I would say if you are looking for something in that category, I would get the A6 all-road over the Mercedes option, the E-Class all-track or all-terrain or whatever it is, whatever all thing that Mercedes
Yeah.
is calling there.
Mhm.
Whether or not I would get it over a V90 cross country, that is a little bit trickier. If you like a more comfortable ride and you like the air suspension, get the all-road. It has the full four-corner air suspension. It's really well priced also, I would say. I do like the design of the V90 a bit better, and it's a little bit roomier on the inside depending on the dimension you're taking a look at. But those are pretty solid options, and I would choose either of them currently before I got the Mercedes-Benz E-Class wagon, because the Mercedes is quite pricey for what you get.
Yeah, yeah. And you've already driven the very fast version of that wagon,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
RS6.
Hmm.
What a beautiful car.
Yeah. Audi's wagons are lovely there. Let's
Yeah.
see here. Comment on the new CarPlay ecosystem.
Yeah.
I have not heard any auto manufacturer
Well, they
really
had a list
talk
of them
about
that said that
this.
they had a list of, I think they did.
I know there are car companies that say it's coming, but I don't know exactly which features they're going to support is a question mark.
Yeah, I want to say there was something. I saw something recently where one company was like, "We're not doing it." Like there was, I
Mhm.
think it may have been BMW, but it was a
No,
luxury brand.
BMW's pretty all in on CarPlay.
So I think
Um,
it may have been Porsche then, because it was someone like that where they were like, "We don't think that makes sense for our cars." I could see Porsche saying that. They don't have a.
you can check and see if you can find any list there on that one.
Okay.
The
Yeah. So, oh well, that might be current CarPlay. It has a whole list of
yeah.
brands. That might be the current version. But yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
about the new stuff.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of the new CarPlay experience, I think, is probably what Brent is asking about here, where it's the whole
Yeah.
dash that they were previewing
Yeah.
that can go in there. I would not be surprised if Ford was one of the first vendors that would do that, because there have been some spy shots out of, for instance, the new Aviator and Explorer, at least in China, having a big dash-to-dash display. There was a list of car manufacturers that would support at least some subset of these new features in their new vehicles. Ford and Acura were among them. I'm looking here on the list here. I'm sure that there's going to be a more up-to-date list coming at some point soon here. But I will say that it's going to take a lot longer than we might think, because Apple announced support for multiple CarPlay displays. 3 years ago, I think, is when that support was announced.
It's just now happening.
Yep,
Yeah.
just now
Yeah.
happened. So
Well, they said with this update that won't be hitting until 2024. So
yeah.
it's fine.
So I would assume that it's probably going to be that similar, like 3 years, maybe 4 years, till we actually see this kind of thing maybe in a new car. Who knows when it will be? But BMW, for those that don't know, BMW's iDrive 8 is, as far as I know, the only and the first system to support multiple displays with CarPlay in a limited fashion. It's not quite what Apple was initially showing, but on iDrive 8 equipped BMWs, you can get an Apple Maps map display on the instrument cluster while you're doing something else on the infotainment system with Apple CarPlay. So you can Waze and Apple Maps at the same time, or Apple Maps and do something else, but you cannot move Waze or Google Maps to the other display. Apple supports it, BMW does not for some reason. So Apple allows you to have multiple displays with anything that you want on any of them, but for some reason, BMW's implementation of that particular functionality only puts the Apple Maps thing over there on the instrument cluster.
I do wonder if Kia. Oh, did I lose Alex? It's just me, guys. I I wonder if Kia or Hyundai will be the first, because they were the first to do regular CarPlay. There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. I disappeared for a bit.
I had it, but I was saying I wouldn't be surprised if it was Kia or Hyundai who got it first, because they were the first to do the original. The Kia Soul was the first car to get CarPlay and Android Auto. So maybe they'll be first again with this, but I don't know. This is a whole different ball game, and if they do it, it's probably going to be on an electric, like the EV9. By the time that comes out, maybe that would have it, because it's probably going to have some big display setup that could really support that system. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yep, here's an interesting question from Warren about Volkswagen's ID4. I have not heard any reports saying that they're not moving on dealer floors. I do know that they can't build enough, and Volkswagen has had some severe part shortages worldwide. This is the big reason that ID4 has gone wrong in the United States, because they're none of them coming from Germany. There were some wiring harness issues because of the war in Ukraine. So this is not chip shortage related. This is Ukrainian war related. There's a big, huge harness factory in Ukraine that has been disrupted by the war. It's affected BMW and Volkswagen, but apparently it seems like the ID4 has been a major victim here. And the factory in the United States was still pulling parts from this factory. So the production in the United States has been delayed by, I want to say, 9 months, because I was touring the factory last year in the dog and pony show of the factory's up and running. Look, we're making pre-production models. Absolute silence since then. That seems to be the big reason why. So it appears things are finally rolling. Volkswagen has finally announced that the factory will actually be turning up production models by the end of the summer.
Oh, I thought they already put one out. Didn't they just like recently, like last week, say the first one just rolled off?
Yeah, first model, it's tricky to see exactly, how that goes, because the first model may not actually go to a customer. We'll see. Right. But it should be really going by the end of the summer. And they're also going to be building the smaller battery pack here and the all-wheel drive models. So that will lower the price on the ID4. It will get the production kind of back where they want it to be. But I think that the big problem sales-wise for them is not that nobody's interested. It's that everybody's interested. They just can't get one. So... let's see. Here's a good one. Thanks for the super chat here. Hyundai and Kia seem to be so far along with their EVs. Why are American brands so far behind? What's your take here?
I don't know if GM is the only one that I can, because like Ford Mach-E came out, Mustang Mach-E, but like nothing has really happened since then. GM is just like constantly coming out with announcements of cars that are coming out in like a year or two, but nothing has
Lightning
come out. And then Lightning, yeah, sorry about Lightning. That's it really. Like there's nothing else we know of on the Ford side that has like tangible. There's any tangible evidence of. At least that I'm aware of.
Well, we know that they delayed some. We know that they pushed things back because there was going to be
an Aviator, right?
There's going to be an electric. There were going to be electric full-size SUVs and mid-size SUVs, but they're producing tons of Mach-Es, so they just pushed those all back and said, let's just focus on the one we can build. So I guess it depends on how you want to look at it with Ford. General Motors has had lots of promises, not a lot of delivery. And Ford's had a lot of delivery, not too many future promises.
And then Stellantis, it's like, okay, Chrysler is going to become our EV brand, but by 2028. So it's like,
Eventually.
We'll see with them. I do believe that they will be the first to do the electric minivan. They were the first to do the plug-in hybrid minivan. I feel like they have the experience to maybe
Mm-hmm.
make that happen. Because I don't know. I mean, Toyota. I thought Toyota would be the first hybrid minivan, but they were late in my opinion on that. I mean, not late, but later than I expected.
Yeah.
Now it's
Or are
here.
we going to be honest and call the Kia EV9 an electric minivan? I don't know.
The spy shots are they are looking like it's going to be a big Kia Soul. Like that's what
Yeah.
it's starting to look like. Yeah, so I wonder. And then of course the ID Buzz,
Mm-hmm.
but that's 2024
Yeah.
for us here, and so something else might be out by then. Who knows? Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah. My personal take on this one would be GM obviously has sold more EVs and plug-in hybrids than the Koreans, mind you. So
Correct.
put that aside. They're old. They're not modern ones.
Right.
But they have sold more than collectively the Koreans have so far. Ford is still selling more EVs than Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis at the moment put together, it looks like. Exactly how that will continue, it looks like the Koreans are probably going to edge ahead. And how General Motors enters the situation, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Ford would love to sell more Mach-E's. They don't have the production capacity. And it looks like Hyundai and Kia were better positioned on production capacity in Korea. They have probably some better supplier agreements, a little bit more forward thinking, et cetera there. It's a difficult question because EVs are still a very small percentage of new vehicle sales. So this is sort of like saying that, a car manufacturer in the 1940s was late to the diesel party or was late to automatic transmissions, which obviously they were, but at this point in time, it doesn't really make a difference because everybody has one and it took a while to get there. So I think it's going to be the same buildup until EVs are, if they even get this far, until EVs are 50% of new car sales. It's really hard to say that anybody is that far behind on anything. We're still talking about vehicles that sell only slightly ahead of manual transmissions and diesels when we're talking about a year-on-year basis.
Right.
Most recently, because of higher gas prices, EV sales have really shot up and EV demand has really shot up. We just don't know where the ceiling is on those sales numbers. But if we're simply talking about last few years running, it's not an enormous percentage of sales yet.
Right. Right.
Here is a good question that I get a lot, and I've spoken on a little bit. And here, feel free to jump in if you have any specific questions here, Brian, because I know that I'm a bit more knowledgeable on the electrical side of things here, but follow me along. So at this point in time, when it comes to EV charging, 800-volt EV charging is getting a lot of press. Hyundai and Kia and Genesis advertise it a lot, so does General Motors and Lucid as well. But when we really look at charge rates, you don't actually need 800-volt charging stations to charge most of those EVs at their maximum rate. For instance, Tesla supports 255 kilowatt peak rate charging, no 800-volt system in a Tesla. But about 255 kilowatts is the most you can really do on the 400-volt nominal architecture. And it all has to do with the amount of current you can push through the pins on the charge connector. About 500 amps is considered the realistic top for the charge connectors that we're all using, whether we're talking about the absolute latest version of CHAdeMO in Japan, not in the United States, CCS in the United States, or the Tesla DC charging connector currently. About 500 amps is the absolute max. So if you want to charge faster than 250 kilowatts, 255 kilowatts, then you need to increase the voltage to get more power through that same connector because the current, now you've hit your current peak. So all you could do is increase voltage. Now, when you look at this you say, well, okay, that's how that works, then clearly a Porsche Taycan is only barely above that peak. It only barely needed to be 800 volts. Probably didn't even need to be 800 volts, let's be honest. It could have been 500 and it still would have charged at 270. Right. The Kia products, they don't need to be 800 volts yet, but they're future planning. So the rationale behind it in the Kia products and the Hyundai products is if you design everything for this now, you can mix and match components for later. So the motors are all 800 volt native. It does result in slightly lower weights in the vehicles because some of the conductors can be smaller, but we're not talking about a huge weight savings here. It's maybe a few pounds, not a big deal. It is interesting, for instance, that General Motors Ultium family of products is only 800 volt native in some respects on some of the vehicles. The Hummer truck, it's an 800-volt native vehicle, but it has 400-volt motors because everything else in the Ultium family is primarily a 400-volt vehicle. Lyric's 400 volts. We don't know about Celestiq yet, but we know the Blazer is going to be a 400-volt EV, etc. Because in those vehicles, the voltage is determined by the number of modules the battery pack has, and you have to have 24 of the modules to get 800 volts. The only one that supports 24 modules is the Hummer EV at the moment. So that's kind of how that stacks up there. It might be more important in the future, especially if we see broader support from other car manufacturers, which does appear to be growing. Volkswagen Audi Group has said that their newer vehicles are all going to be moving in that direction. So we are not going to be seeing a continuation of the battery platform that we find now in the ID4, etc., or in the Porsche Taycan and Audi e-tron GTRS, whatever we call that. We're going to be seeing some new platform that has been retweaked around, probably some combination of them. Hyundai, Kia solidly on the 800-volt bandwagon. We don't know what Stellantis is going to do yet, to be honest. And Toyota has said stay tuned because they don't think that DC fast charging is as important to their customer base as others. It does appear that Tesla is going to move in that direction in the future, and we don't know exactly what that will look like. It will obviously require a rollout of newer DC fast charge stations, perhaps some bit of a learning curve in comparison between stations that support it and don't support it, and whether or not a connector has to change, etc. So some of that's a little uncertain on that side.
Good to know.
Let's move along here, and let's see. I want to go ahead and cover the Porsche question here.
Okay. All right. Better weekend car at 2014 Porsche Cayman S or 12 Carrera, 911 Carrera, for only 7,000 more. When it comes to older Porsches, if you can get a 12 911 for 7,000 more, and you're willing to spend 7,000 more, I would just do that. Because the 14 Cayman is not going to be nicer. It's a lesser vehicle. I would even, I know the Cayman is considered, 718s and all that are considered like the most fun to drive Porsches, but I'm the kind of person that I wouldn't want to drive that car because I know a 911 is nicer on the inside. If I'm already going to be paying for a Porsche, I want the nicer Porsche. That's just me. And it sounds like in that situation, if you can spend 7,000 more for the 911, that's what I would do. But,
and everyone's always going to ask why you couldn't afford the 911.
Right. Exactly.
Next up, we have another super chat here. Thanks for that. 2023 Type R reserved. The dealer will only make me buy accessories for $3,000. That's an interesting requirement. I've never heard of that. Like, yes, there's going to be a dealer markup, but you have to buy accessories as the markup?
That's the markup, yeah.
Still interesting. Equally drawn to the M240i. Young and single. So, Brian, what would a young and single person get? 240i or Type R?
Do you plan on being single forever? Because I feel like maybe... I don't know. I love the 240i. Like I just had the 230i, and I've driven an M2. I've driven an M3 40i, but I've driven only the 230i. So combining knowing what I know from the M2 40i to the package of the 2 Series, I would love that car. It's going to be really fast, really fun. If you don't need much space, it's it still has a trunk. It has a back seat that you can put people in. But if you want to like expand your circle a little bit and you want to have people in the car all the time, it's not going to be the easiest option. The Type R probably will be more fun to drive because it's not going to be as heavy, I would assume. The M240i is pretty heavy, I believe. Like
it's not light. It's not light.
Light. Still fun, still very fast. It will be faster, and nicer. It's a BMW interior, but I don't know. I think it really was. You want to roll your own gears. That's the other thing. You have to do that with the Type R. You can't do that with an M240i. If you're willing to spend even more and wait a little bit, the M2 will probably be manual, but that's going to be way more expensive. So I don't know. It depends.
If you're going to that first date, which should you pull up in?
What would you pull up in? That would be the thing. Yeah. M240i would look better. The new Type R would be better than the old Type R to pull up in on a first date, I would say. But still, that wing might be like, oh, you're one of those people. I don't know. Go with your gut on that one, I'd say.
And let's see here, Defender or Bronco? Oh, this is an interesting one because they're currently an LX 470
And
owner.
this is actually a very interesting question because I know somebody at Lexus who says, and I'm not going to name drop her and not confirm this as fact, but he said he's seen the new GX, the upcoming GX, and he says, and I quote, that it's going to be a combination design wise of new Defender, Toyota FJ Cruiser, and the original LX, which is a very interesting combination of vehicles. But I have a feeling you should wait and see what that turns out to look like. I don't know, but if that's true and it doesn't look like ugly, that could be a really interesting car. And he also said it's going to be very off-road oriented this time around. It's going to have 33-inch tires from the factory is what he said. And this is, again, speculation. I don't know. But if that's all true, I would say wait and see what that turns out to be like.
That all sounds right because the Lexus GX is, of course, the Land Cruiser Prado internationally. And so internationally, it's had a lot more off-road bits than have been sold in the U.S. So, and with the Land Cruiser going the way of the Dodo Bird in the U.S., the LX and GX have had to pick up the slack. But we do know it is going to be body on frame still. So definitely different than the Defender.
Right.
If you've had a Lexus and you like Lexus reliability, probably neither of these options is going to be right for you. But I would bet that the Bronco is going to be more dependable long term. It's not going to be as nice as a Defender, though. It does drive better than a Wrangler. It's more on-road focused than a Wrangler. But, the Defender is lovely. I do quite like the Defender. It's probably going to be broken a lot, let's be honest.
Yeah. And then you've got the new 130, which is like too long. Looks kind of dumb. Kind of like Grand Wagoneer L. A little too long in the back. But
let's see here. Taylor is asking us best highway cruiser for 15,000 used, solely focused on quiet and comfort. Avalon. I think Avalon's resale value is a little high, so you might have a better deal on a quirky product that didn't sell well, like a Kia Cadenza, or which would, I think, fit the bill there as far as quiet and comfort. Or you could try, what else could they get for 15,000 used here?
Maybe, like, if you don't care about reliability, a Volkswagen Phaeton.
You probably would have troubles with 15,000 used.
Phaetons have gone up. I found them around there, and they're high mileage.
How many? High mileage. That might be a little.
Yeah,
I guess
be very risky.
Taylor, let us know what kind of mileage you're willing to live with.
Azera, somebody just said Azera. Yeah, the Hyundai Azera, depending on how far back, like a 2014, that generation was really good.
Yeah, the Azera stopped earlier though. That's the only thing with the Azera. You're not going to get as recent of a one. Because the Azera got canceled first. Then the Cadenza lived on for another generation, and then a refresh, then got killed. Yes. So
refresh for 1 year.
Refresh for 1 year only. But that's pretty comfortable and quiet inside. Yeah. Most likely there's going to be some K900s kicking around that are going to be nice and quiet from Kia as well. It's another thing that did not sell well at all.
Maybe Lincoln MKZ or
Lincoln MKZ. I think MKS is going to be a better, quieter car.
Probably, yeah.
So there's a good one, MKS. Buick has been out of the sedan. Someone's asking about Buick. Buick's been out of the sedan game for a bit too long on the larger sedan side. So they did have the smaller Verano for a bit. And I liked the Verano a lot. It wasn't exactly quiet.
Oh, it wasn't? Because I thought they marketed it as like the quietest car in that class.
I mean, it's not a quiet class though. The compact category. I wonder if you could get Lexus ES is probably also the same resale value problem.
Yeah,
high resale value.
Maybe like an older Acura RL or an RLX. RLX is probably too expensive, but RL might be an option. Even TL, but TL is a little sportier, so that was probably louder.
Yeah,
less comfy.
Yeah, there are a few options out there. Someone's asking about the Impala. The Impala is actually not a bad deal there. It was fairly quiet in that generation and pretty large, and it lived on for a decent amount of time.
It did, yeah.
There was also a hybrid Impala.
I would only recommend the last generation they made.
Yeah, there was also a hybrid Impala, which was pretty quiet. So I would say any of those options might be solid ones to take a look at there. Someone's asking, how long do we have to wait for an efficient sedan that isn't a Tesla? The Ioniq 6 is probably going to be your closest best bet here.
Yeah. Unless, would you count Polestar 2 in that, or is that too expensive?
I wouldn't call that an efficient sedan.
Yeah.
It's also not, it's not affordable either.
No.
I mean, the higher performance versions of the Polestar 2 get pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And that family of electric vehicles from Polestar and from Volvo is not efficient at all. Interestingly, this is a handy one to know. I like them all. I like the Polestar 2, I like the C40, I like the XC40, but if we're talking efficiency, then a Polestar 2 is only minorly more efficient than a 7,100-pound Rivian R1T truck. So,
well, yeah, Ioniq 6 is supposed to come out here beginning of next year, so that would be how long you'd have to wait for that.
They're talking specifically LFP batteries for cycle durability. Difficult to tell. We also don't really know what the cycle durability will be like on the eGMP platform vehicles, to be honest. They do have a long battery warranty. Exactly how that really translates out, we don't necessarily know because vehicle manufacturers treat their batteries differently. And this is one key thing to say. So on Teslas with LFP batteries, generally speaking, they let you use more of the battery than they do on their other battery chemistry vehicles. So exactly what the durability and dependability will be like long term is uncertain because it all depends on how you use the battery. So, Tesla's letting you charge and discharge and cycle that battery more, so it may not actually have as many charge cycles, or it may be very similar in terms of its durability charge cycle wise as the NMC batteries, etc., that they're using in the other vehicles.
For viewers who don't know what that stands for, can you explain it really quickly?
Yeah, it's the battery chemistry. So lithium iron phosphate batteries are a different technology that is growing here. So there are a bunch of different lithium ion style batteries. I will let everybody just do their own Googling on that. They're all under the umbrella of lithium ion batteries. And so the exact chemistry it varies from batteries that are in your smartphone to your laptop to plug-in hybrids to full EVs, etc. And some chemistries are more durable than others. Some chemistries are more energy dense than others. Some are more expensive than others. So exactly which blend of features you're interested in determines which one is right for your application. That's probably the easiest way to explain this. So, for instance, some of the challenges around these conflicting desires for modern EVs are why we see some manufacturers using a blend of different battery chemistries. Ford, for instance, appears to really be trying to transition to LFP batteries for cost and cycle life and packaging as well, minorly. And it appears that Tesla's pretty dedicated to using both. So they're using LFP batteries in their less expensive vehicles to help reduce cost, and different battery technologies in other vehicles for improved charging times. And that is one big difference. LFP batteries, you can't charge as rapidly. They have greater cycle durability in that you can charge them more fully and you can discharge them more fully as well, but you cannot go from either state as rapidly as the more cobalt-heavy chemistries that are out there as well. So hopefully that gives people a little bit of an idea there. So everything has pros and cons. Let's see here.
Oh, that's a question I would love to know an answer to, because it's about time. Like, what are they waiting on? Like, it's got to be a supplier thing, right? It's got to be someone who's like, well, our screen wouldn't support it, or like, what? I don't know.
From what I have been told, and this is this admittedly we're in the realm of rumor here. Yeah. What I have been told is that there is no hardware support difference between them, but the software is not there yet, and it doesn't seem to be a huge focus for them apparently. And I would love to maybe hear from people. Do you use CarPlay wirelessly or not? I never do. In vehicles that support wired and wireless CarPlay, I always plug the phone in because I want it to charge.
Yeah, it won't charge. It won't charge if you do wireless.
Yeah, and battery life, especially if you're using the snazzier, newer features of CarPlay, you need the you need the USB charging because they will really drain batteries rapidly. In the BMW iX and i4, I noticed that over the road trip range test that I do, which is a 5-hour drive approximately, in both of those vehicles, I didn't have the USB cables to just plug my phone in, and it wanted to connect wirelessly. So I let it connect wirelessly. I put my phone on the charging mat, and after 5 hours, I had about 20% less battery than when I started. So the wireless charging just can't keep up with the multiple display thing, especially. So if you're doing, Google satellite imagery on one display, and Waze is running in the background, and you're playing your tunes, and then the Apple Map with directions is on the other display, I mean, it's just using more power than a Qi wireless charging mat can supply. So
Right, and if people were here at the beginning of the stream when I was talking about my issues with the Grand Wagoneer and Uconnect and all that, that was a wireless Android Auto issue where if you're familiar with new Jeep interiors and specifically Grand Wagoneer where it has that touchscreen that's also a cover that automatically opens and closes to reveal the cubby underneath, that has the wireless charge pad down in there. And when you close, when I had my car, you would put the phone, my Android, my Google Pixel, in there, close that back up so you could access the massage features because I want a massage, But if you closed that screen back, my phone would lose GPS signal down in there, so you couldn't do the maps either. Waze or Google Maps, you couldn't do any of those maps on Android Auto, and that's not supposed to happen. And I've talked to the Stellantis people, and they said it's not supposed to do that. Clearly, it's not supposed to do that. So hopefully, it was just my unit that I had. But yeah, there are reliability issues with using it wirelessly. But I know some people just commented saying that they use it. I mean, if it works, use it. If you're not worried about the charge of your phone, then by all means. But on a long road trip, it wouldn't work for most cars.
Right. And it's like I'm looking at the details here, and currently with the latest version of iOS here, it looks like 7.5 watts is still the maximum charge rate. Someone can update us down there if there's a different one here. Let's see here. But most cars, it looks like MagSafe can do 15 watts. So that could be your best bet. But it depends on the phone type. Some may be down there at 12. But none of the wireless charging mats that are in the vehicle will do that because it's not the same charging standard there. It's slightly different. So that's why the wired connection is the preferred here, because almost every new vehicle sold in North America will support a 20-watt charge through the USB connections in the dash. And with all of those things on there, you're going to be using just over that 7 or 8 watts that's actually available to you. So, if you have a MagSafe adapter and it's in your car, yes, you can do that. But then at that point, why didn't you just plug it in? Because you still got a cable dangling around everywhere. I would rather just plug my phone in. That's just me. Especially if you're on a longer journey. I don't ever have a 2-minute, 2-second commute. So maybe if you're just dashing around the corner to something, wireless would be a little bit quicker. But yeah, that's not just me. So let's move along here. And what happens here? Let's see. Oh, Naveen's got lots of questions today. When is EV infrastructure going to be at parity with the average gas station? When the average vehicle on the road is an EV, that's kind of an easy question there. So it's going to be a while.
When you see Buc-ee's with electric charging stations, then you'll know. That'll be it.
Oh, this is an interesting question. Audi Q7 or MDX Type S for a winding, snowy road. They're actually going to be fairly similar in feel because they both have more weight on the front axle, but they both can send more power to the rear axle under certain conditions. So actually, they'd have a relatively similar feel when equipped with similar tires and tire sizes would probably be the best way to answer that one.
It'll come down to the infotainment systems.
Here's a good one. How available are Hyundai and Kia plug-in hybrids in your area? I know they're EVs. They're having troubles, obviously, stocking enough. But what about the plug-in hybrids?
Well, from where I am, they've made it hard to point out. Like if you see a new Santa Fe plug-in, you can't immediately tell it's a plug-in because it looks just like the hybrid or even the regular ones. It's usually just the badge in the back. Now they've done a good job at making them look like the normal version. So in terms of glancing at cars on the road, I'm not able to really tell, and I don't really have the numbers on that, but I mean, I'm starting to see more when I see them parked and I look at the back and I see the plug-in hybrid badge on the like Tucson, Santa Fe plug-in hybrids. I've seen a few recently, and when I see a few, that means to me that they're selling because it's like more than a couple. I'm not out in California now. That a couple times I've been out there, every time I'm there, I'm like, this is why. Well, the difference between where I am and there is all the cars go there first, and everyone starts getting those over. Like if a car just comes out on sale,
Kind of true.
People get them there in California first, and then the rest of the country gets them. And so that's why it takes a while. Like here, you don't see the brand new stuff until like a month. You don't start noticing it as a driver until a month or so into the sales cycle of a new car. In terms of California, though, like I've been there and I saw stuff that just went on sale, and I was like, damn, I saw 2 new Honda HRVs and they just went on sale. And that was there for like 5 hours. So, I don't know. It's hard to tell, but
yeah, especially when it comes to plug-in hybrids and EVs, they definitely prioritize California first because the bulk of sales are here for those type of vehicles. And then, of course, the ZEV states next. This is a good point here. 2 things from Matthew, actually, because I saw one else here. I don't believe that this particular thing is a thing because, of course, Kia and Hyundai do support wireless CarPlay, just not on the big screen.
Right.
So there's no fundamental problem with how they choose to do that internally. It just appears to be an internal software thing there. But Matthew does make a good point here with home charging. So yeah, depending on how you want to look at it, with an EV, there are more charging stations than gas stations because everybody has a plug at home. Now, whether that plug will work with your EV driving, style and actual number of miles a day, et cetera, and whether it's conveniently located, that's a whole different question. So definitely a thing.
And he's saying that they don't get Hyundai or Kia EV or plugins in Nebraska at all. That kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yes, I have heard this. And that's partially because of the dealer network. So remember, your dealer will have to either, your dealer may be able to order them, let's put it that way. Sure, they should be able to order a plug-in hybrid if you want to, but many dealers in some of those more rural areas just won't stock them because they don't think they'll sell. And it's hard to blame them if they have had vehicles that they have pre-ordered or whatever and have just sat on the lot for a long time, and maybe they're burnt by that. Who knows? But you can always ask them if it's something they can order. Now, I know currently there are a decent number of states where Hyundai and Kia EVs are not yet available. The plan is 50 state availability eventually, but because they currently can't produce enough vehicles for the demand in the states where they are sold, not a lot of incentive to try and expand it to a whole bunch of other states where you wouldn't have enough production volume to actually sell them there either.
Now, I will say I haven't seen too many Ioniq 5s or EV6s here. I really haven't seen many at all yet. When I do, I'm like, oh, there it is. But yeah, they're not proliferated yet, so we'll see. And Georgia wasn't one of the first states to get them either. Georgia, at least the Ioniq 5, it was not on the list when it first came out. They're selling them here now, but they weren't first.
This is an interesting question here about Tesla opening up their network for non-Teslas. The first thing I would caution is that this is going to be a very slow roll. So we don't know exactly what this is going to look like. We know that Tesla is chasing some sort of credits, apparently, and that's the primary reason that they seem to be doing this. But we know that it's going to require either new stations or adapters. So they have indicated, and the rumor mill is indicating now, that the version 4 of Tesla's supercharging stations may have a CCS plug as well, unless the world shifts and Tesla suddenly decides to add CCS connectors to their own vehicles, mind you. But that's what it looks like. It looks like it might be either version 4 stations, or it is possible that they could start rolling out adapters that are somehow tethered or available there at the charge station site. It appears that they're not going to make people buy their own adapter, although that is entirely possible. This could be a deal where Tesla says, hey, our network is open to everybody, but you get to buy your own $700 Tesla to CCS adapter. Some of those details are just uncertain at the moment. If and when they do open it, there does not appear to be any indication that Tesla is going to try and create some sort of segregated network where Tesla owners have better stations than the others. It appears that it's all just going to be tossed into the same basket. We also know, however, that Tesla's CCS adapter for the US does work. So if you have a recent model Tesla, it may or may not be available on Tesla's store just yet. I'm sure someone will correct me. But the South Korean adapter that has been out for a while, I know people that have bought one, had it shipped to someone in South Korea, had it shipped to them in the United States, and it does work on recent model Teslas because the software has been finally updated to make that adapter work. But there are a lot of caveats. The maximum charge rate is not overly fast. So I believe it peaks at around 150 kilowatts, something like that, with the adapter. So it's definitely going to be slower than going to a native Tesla station. It is a little on the bulky side. It's a little on the expensive side. And it's a little awkwardly shaped depending on the version of Tesla you're looking at, which is why Tesla has recently sort of massaged the charging door location on some of the vehicles to make the adapter fit a little bit better. So all that keeping there in mind. So we'll see exactly how this will all go in the end. Let's see here.
Are you worried or aware of this situation? Cablegate.
I have not heard of any issue with the hybrid cable issue there. Yeah, we don't know.
I assume you mean Prime, because
yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't heard about that.
Tell us if people have seen any details there. Let's see here. Milton is looking to buy an MDX. Do you think the V6 would be more reliable than the Type S long term? I probably would say yes, but this is just the Ouija board talking here. So no specific reasons other than just generally speaking, the more power you put on a performance vehicle, the more likely components will be to wear early. It's also simpler because it doesn't have the adaptive suspension system, etc. So probably it's going to be a little bit more reliable. And so here's a good one for you. What do you think of this styling trend?
Well, another person or another company that's going to do it, I think, is Audi, because that upcoming, I believe it's the A6 e-tron, has been spied with that split headlight look that we've seen on like Genesis GV6 or not GV Genesis G70. That refresh kind of had that look, like Toyota Mirai. That's that looking split. Looks like Audi's going to do that, but in terms of the actual headlight being lower, down where you would expect the fog lights to be, I mean, I don't know if there is, other than a design choice there, I don't know if it was a like, oh, it makes more sense for safety for it to be lower. I will say people do complain a lot about I know Hyundai and Kia are notorious for this, but their rear turn signals being down the bumper. I know people hate that. But it's like my argument for that is like, well, you're not supposed to be so close to the car in front of you that you can't see the bumper. They teach you that in driver's ed. So I mean that, I don't know. Like,
so a quick Google indicates that everybody is following in the footsteps of the truly atrocious Fiat Multipla, and that was the first modern vehicle with the separated turn signally daytime running lamp headlight thing. And if nobody knows what a Fiat Multipla looks like, you should A, count your blessings, and B, Google it, because boy, is it weird. And then the second one was the Aztec, which I do recall was very strange looking as well.
And then the one that I remember that had an impact that I remember it clearly was the current Jeep Cherokee before the refresh. That was polarizing, and now everyone does it. And it's like, okay. They switched back to not doing it, or did they? Because the refresh?
They massaged it into a not doing it,
right.
Because there was kind of a pushback, and Hyundai and Kia had started doing it right around the same time. I think that the Cherokee came a little bit after, but the current Cherokee, they went back to just one headlight module
and I think it was a good refresh. That really fixed it. That front end was.
They didn't change too much, which is interesting.
It looks what they did worked.
Yeah, what they did worked, because people really were confused by that thing. The general reason, as I've been told, was that they wanted to give the front, especially with the Cherokee, they wanted to give the front a very slim, sexy look, but the technology to make LED headlights standard was not there yet, so they were expensive. So they still needed to have Cherokees with halogen headlights and HID headlights, etc., which just required larger modules. And so they couldn't have the slimmer module up top, which they wanted, so they just stuck LEDs up top and then had that weird frosted smoked headlamp thing below. It looked okay in darker paint colors, but it looked really weird if you got a white one.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good question coming up here.
Here's a good question. How do we buy cars without paying the huge dealer markups? Always just hunt for a dealer that does not charge dealer markups. They exist, they are there, and everybody should support them. And if everybody ran away from dealers that charged markups, maybe we could squash the dealer markup.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely do we go to a dealer that is aware of, that we run Alex and Autos and we're buying something. The one exception here is now the Lightning, and I went into the Lightning with Ford not knowing that we bought the Lightning, then got the login notice that there was going to be a $10,000 dealer markup, and then I quickly put my principals in a drawer, closed the drawer, contacted Ford, and said, so about this markup thing. And Ford then went to the dealer, et cetera, and everybody claims there's going to be no markup, but we don't have a Lightning yet, so I cannot verify this. But I will say that dealer was on a list that had committed to no dealer markup, and supposedly other people have purchased Lightnings from that dealer with no dealer markup, so we'll see if that's actually true. I know that there are some Google databases you can probably hunt around there where customers will put dealers that are not charging markups on new vehicles. It is getting harder and harder to find, though, because right now there is a massive problem with supply in the automotive industry. I believe at the end of this year, we're going to be lucky if the United States has about 13 to 14 million new cars sold. And by all indications, the running demand is about 16 million for the United States, which would be the best-selling car year ever in the United States. But supply constraints are just such that they just can't produce that many. So there are dealer markups on most vehicles if you are just casually looking. But it is still possible to do it without. Let's put it that way.
I'll put out that there is a crowdsourced website called markups.org. If you go on there, it's kind of like Waze. You can report what you're finding in terms of this dealership tried to sell me this car for this markup or no markup, whatever it is. And you can go on there and see what everybody reports and be like, oh, that dealership's doing all these cars marked up, blacklist them. So it's like a crowdsourced thing. If that's something you're really interested in looking into, maybe I would say look at that for sure, because that's a nice resource. Markups.org. This question, I don't know if we want to make this our last question or not, but this is a good one because this is an important new EV from GM. I personally think it looks to me like a Chinese knockoff of what the Blazer EV should have been. That is how I feel about it. I don't know what it is about it, but the front end and the side profile, they look like knockoffs to me of what it should have been. Like, I don't know if anybody agrees with me on that. Like, it's weird. It's not a bad car. I mean, it's somebody was asking, is it bigger than the Equinox? Yeah, Blazer EV will be bigger. Definitely a little bit bigger.
Looks like it's going to be a little bit Mach-E sized and a little bit boxier in the back.
Yes. Yeah. And the interior looks really nice. You got Super Cruise. I think all their new EVs are going to have Super Cruise. So that's good. And I like that they stuck with the circular air vents from the current Blazer.
Right.
I liked that element. But yeah, I think it's
also
also
things we don't know. Like it appears that the most range is going to be most likely with the front wheel drive one. And that is a weird twist.
Yes,
that there's going to be a front wheel drive one, a rear wheel drive one, and an all wheel drive one, depending on exactly what you're looking for. But that over 300 miles of range is most likely going to be the front wheel drive one.
I wonder if you'll be able to.
Oh no! Actually, correction here. Just one quick correction. They said actually the 320 miles is going to be the rear-wheel drive one.
The RS, right?
320 miles in a full charge, says with available rear-wheel drive. But the RS, it says, will also be available with front-wheel drive. So that's kind of a curious one.
Yeah, but I wonder. Clearly, I mean, I would assume having it, you got, like, say you got an LT2 in front, whatever the options are. For example, LT2 in front wheel drive, theoretically, couldn't software be hacked to make it rear wheel drive if it already
because it's going to have different motor units.
Just one motor in the front.
Yeah,
just stupid. But if you had all wheel drive, the all wheel drive one, potentially you could do that, right? I guess maybe.
Yeah, what we don't know is, are they going to have any sort of motor disconnect feature? to like we see with the eGMP platform vehicles to try and improve efficiency. So some of that is a little uncertain at the moment. They could go either way. They also haven't talked about DC fast charging. I don't see anything on this list here as far as DC fast charging. I don't think they said anything in their press release either about how fast it might charge.
I don't think they did.
They have said there's going to be a really quick one. There will be a SS with wide open watts mode for 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. That's 557 horsepower. But I would be willing to bet that it's still going to be slower and charge slower than the eGMP.
No, they're pointing out, I think
vehicle.
I did say it, 190 kilowatts will be the max, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so it's going to be pretty similar to the Cadillac Lyriq then, most likely.
This is
basically the battery pack, is very similar to Lyriq.
It's the Lyriq, yeah.
And as a result, since it is roughly dimensionally similar to the Lyriq, it does have a station wagon-y vibe because it has the low roof line, long stretch thing. I kind of think it looks cool. I kind of like the wagon-y vibe. We'll see what it's like in person, I guess.
Yeah, we weren't there.
Here's a good question to end with. Are we going to miss gas cars? No, because they're not going away.
Right.
I will be perfectly honest. I like the theory of EV cars. You know, I'm a firm believer in transitioning towards greener vehicles, lower emissions vehicles, but I am under no illusions that there's going to be.
That was a really bad time for him to cut out, guys. I wonder what he was going to say. Oh, here he comes.
Here I am leaving my own live stream again. Apparently, if you swipe left on this thing, it just goes away. Anyway, but I'm under no illusion that that gas cars are going away anytime soon. There are too many vehicle types where customers aren't interested in them. There's so low customer demand. Then there's also just reality. Having a heavy-duty truck, having an F-250, 350, actually do those sorts of things with a battery, it's just we're not in that world of capability at the moment. Those kinds of vehicles are probably going to have to be hydrogen or something else, whatever that future technology might be. Affordable vehicles, also tricky. You know, we're a very long way away from a Nissan Versa or a Toyota Yaris or a Ford Focus priced vehicle that is an electric vehicle. It just doesn't seem rational at this point in time. So those segments obviously are tricky. Anybody that lives in an apartment currently in the United States, where that's a lot of America, the reality is driving an EV can be complicated. You may have to DC fast charge. I mean, it's like you can't charge your EV at home, right, Brian? So like you had to DC fast charge when you've had the Lightning, or the Ioniq rather. That is definitely a significant life change versus a regular gasoline car. And it's easy for some of us to sit high and mighty that say, well, I can charge at home, I can charge at the office, everybody should do this. It's so much easier than a gasoline vehicle. If you are not in that situation and you cannot charge at home, then it most certainly is a very different kind of lifestyle choice. Yeah. If you are a homeowner, if you have an employer that either pays for your charging or allows you to charge at the office, honestly, it's super easy, and it's probably going to be easier to adapt than any other gasoline car because you'll never visit a gas station again unless you road trip. You charged at the office, charged at home. That's all you do. Never stop again. But if that's not your situation, then yeah, it's going to require some pretty significant changes in addition to possibly paying more. We talk a lot about no compromises or low compromise EVs. The vast majority of those are luxury EVs. BMW iX, perfect example. Absolutely fantastic EV. It's a no-compromise EV. It is better than a BMW X5 in many ways. But it's also $85,000 starting. Goes up to $120,000. So it's easier to make a no-compromise EV there. Are you going to be able to make a 300-mile EV for $20,000 with the size and accommodation and everything that would go into a Nissan Versa or whatever other thing you're talking about, a Chevy Trailblazer, a Hyundai Venue? Absolutely not. That is not in the realm of possibility at the moment. So for that shopper, there is nothing that exists, and there's nothing on the horizon either, really. The closest you could get would be a Chevy Bolt or a Bolt EUV. And General Motors has reduced the price, and I'm really glad that General Motors is attacking that particular segment because they're basically the only one that is really trying that. We have the Kona EV. It's more expensive. And then we don't have the Soul EV anymore. That's gone. The Ioniq is gone. Ford does not have an inexpensive EV
the Leaf
anymore.
is still around, but the
Leaf is still
not
around.
going to last
Leaf
long
is
in
bad.
current form.
Leaf is getting replaced theoretically. And then we have a Mini EV, which is not exactly what a discount shopper might be after. It's certainly not going to get them the range they might need, over 100 miles, etc. So as Brad is saying, like, that's a hybrid. Exactly. That's the thing. So it's going to be a while till we see that kind of motion. But anyway, that's my philosophy is, the sedan is dead, but the gas-powered whatever is certainly not dead. It's going to live on for quite some time. So there we go.
Existential conversations.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thanks for watching, and we will catch you all next week. In the meantime, be sure to remember that there are a bunch of different channels out there. So if you want to see the podcast that occasionally features Brian, sometimes always features Tim. So Tim Mosso from Watchbox. We're over there on the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast. You'll find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else Brian has sent things. Brian does the editing for that one. And of course on YouTube as well, so you'll find that channel there. If you want to check out more details on my home solar setup, on the off-grid setup, you'll find that on the Mountain Garden channel. If you want to talk about Rivian towing, range, how it compares to Lightning, etc., you'll find that content over on EV Buyer's Guide, and then all the usual stuff, again, over on Alex and Autos. So with all that advertising out of the way, we will see you all next week.
Have a great weekend, everyone.